All right, guys, what you want to do? What you want to do? I want to introduce myself. I am the gospel according to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. I hope all is well with you guys. If you don't mind, hit that like, share, subscribe. Make sure you remain subscribed. And of course, comment on the video too. I love the conversation and everything like that. That's about all I can tell you because I'm not telling you to contribute to the channel through super thanks or anything like that, guys. I took the monetization off of my videos, and I'll be doing that for as long as YouTube is selling out to foreign countries to advertise on their platform that I might not agree with. So it is what it is, guys. I talked about that on my last video. If you want to know about that, go watch the last video. But you won't be seeing any ads on my channel as long as that's going on, as long as YouTube is selling out. But anyway, guys, I want to talk about something here, and this is not something that is necessarily controversial. It's just something that I feel is a cool thing to point out. A little bit of Black history for your ass. And I think that it's important because we are living in days and times where people are openly commenting and questioning the validity of Black people's even existence anymore, especially in America, because all we see flooded across the social media platforms are Black people doing terrible things. And I'm not here to say that Black people don't do terrible things. I know that they do terrible things, but there's got to be a balance. Otherwise, not only do other people hate us, but we begin to hate ourselves. And guys, I said that I'm not as much concerned with how other people feel about us as I am concerned about how we feel about each other because that dictates our own conduct. And you see that. You see that every day when we're walking around acting like we ain't shit. We're suffering from all types of mental illness because we have no self-esteem. We're jealous of white people. A lot of us resent white people and other people. We hate them. And unfortunately, violent acts ensue. All right. So little things like this, you guys know I talk about proper representation in movies and things like this, but this right here is some real life history that honestly I would love to see made into a movie. Guys, did you know that last week on September 2nd that the 369th Infantry Regiment named the Harlem Hellfighters, they received the Congressional Gold Medal for World War I heroism. This was last week. I don't know if it was all on the media where you guys are, but I just happened to catch it on CBS News, right? So I want to read this or some of this to you guys so you can see this greatness in history, right? And it's important that we do remember this, guys. You guys might remember a few months ago, I did a video about the 688, and that was an all-women's regiment, and it dealt with mail delivery, World War II, behind enemy lines, and things like that. A lot of people made fun about that. We're living, like I said, we're living in this social climate now where respect for Black Americans' contributions are it's at an all-time low, right? And those women were belittled, even though they did serve a purpose in history. So I want to talk about this here because this is quite accomplishment here, and I believe that it deserves being remembered. Obviously, it's our history, American history, and it says here. One of the most heroic units in American military history was honored in New York and Washington, D.C. last Wednesday. Tributes were held for the 369th Infantry Regiment, the Harlem Hellfighters. Talk about a badass name, the Harlem Hellfighters. At Mount Vernon's Brush Park, a wreath laying ceremony honored Corporal Morris Link, a Mount Vernon resident who fought valiantly with the Harlem Hellfighters during World War I in France and died in combat. Now, the all-black Harlem Hellfighters were known for their unmatched courage. They served 191 days 191 days in continuous combat, more than any other American unit. Now, I know some of you are going to go running to Google or Grok or whatever it is that you guys do to see if that's true. Please go into the comment section and let me know what you find, okay? If that's what you do. All right, but for the purposes of this article here, it says they served 191 days in continuous combat, more than any other American unit. And there they are. Look at their faces. Look at those men. Holy shit, look at them, bruh. In that picture, you have the soldiers of the 369th Regiment of the American Army, the Harlem Hellfighters, and they won the. I'm not going to try to pronounce this. It's Croixde. Day. I know that. Guerre. Croix de Guerre. I don't want to say it like that. Croix de Gras. I don't know, for gallantry. They won an award for gallantry or gallantry in action. Now, what you see in this picture from left to right, in the front row, we have Ed Williams, Herbert Taylor, Leon Frater, Ralph Hawkins, and then in the back row, you have Sergeant H.D. Prinas, Sergeant Dan Storms, Joe Williams, Alfred Hanley, and Corporal T.W. Taylor. I guess the picture was taken in 1919. Wow. Look at those brothers, man. Look at them. They weren't playing around. When they came home, they were largely forgotten. Of course, that tended to be the way it was back then. I mean, with the military, it's always been a mixed bag anyway. With our soldiers who fought in Vietnam, for example. I remember growing up, I saw so many Vietnam vets laying out on the streets of Manhattan. It was like, it was terrible, for all that our veterans do for us, for all that our military does for us. We should do so much more for them. They should never have to work another day in their lives, if you ask me, for putting their lives on the line for this country. But anyway, it's not a pleasant story. Many of them died in poverty, had medical issues, were not granted medical services by the military. They came home to very Jim Crow and segregationist America, and many of them died in poverty, said Lieutenant Colonel retired Francis Kerrison Jr., a former commander with the 369th Regiment. In Washington, the Harlem Hellfighters were awarded the Congressional Gold Medal. Families of the famed Hellfighters were there to accept the tribute. They sacrificed, and they thought they were making a difference, and today proves that they did. Deborah Willett, a descendant of a Harlem Hellfighter, said. Representative Tom Suozzi told CBS News New York he first learned about Sergeant Leander Willett in 2019 after speaking with his grandchildren and helped him get a posthumous Purple Heart. He then went on to introduce this Congressional Gold Medal Act because he's far from the only Hellfighter who had gone far too long without recognition, Suozzi said. The Harlem Hellfighters gave everything for America in a time when America refused to honor their sacrifice. This medal is a small part of our effort to remember them and say thank you. The Congressional Gold Medal, by the way, is one of the nation's highest honors, fitting and long overdue. But the Harlem Hellfighters were one of a kind. They were brave, they were bold, and beguiling patriots who loved America, even when America did not show them the same love, House Minority Leader Representative Hakeem Jeffries said. Okay, they faced persistent persecution and discrimination in the ranks, but they swore an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States, and they kept that oath with their lives. Speaker of the House, Representative Mike Johnson said, the Harlem Hellfighters changed history, and now their courage and patriotism will live on forever. All right. Well, there it is, guys. That's the end of that article. Obviously, when I saw this, I wanted to share it because, like I said, there's so much negative vibes in the world these days when it comes to Black people and the Black image. And I can never just accept that. Like, I see the wrong that's going on out here. I see how so many of us have been led astray and how so many of us are drinking that Kool-Aid that's being poured for us by the American Society of Magical Liberals, which always wants to keep us in a state of victimhood, believing that the only way we can ever rise, the only way we can ever feel good about ourselves is to either be race swapped into somebody else's identity that isn't ours, as if who we are is not going to be good enough until we become like them. Or it could be a simple situation of unless someone else gives us that helping hand, from the American Society of Magical Liberals. In other words, the only way we can get up is if they lift us up. Like we don't have anything within ourselves where we can do this ourselves. You know, we come from a place where we can be self-sufficient. You know, that's basically how we're taught in the Black community, and too many of us believe that, guys. But I know better because I watched my father be a New York City police officer. I watched him rise through the ranks. Sergeant, lieutenant, captain, detective. I mean, he was everything. You know what I mean? I watched my grandfather, a World War II vet himself. I watched how he carried himself with dignity. I've spoken about him before. He's a man who always stood for the national anthem. He always stood for the Pledge of Allegiance. He always flew the American flag outside of his home. So when I see so many of us today where we don't want to participate in 4th of July festivities, or we don't want to stand for the national anthem, that should have never been a thing, never been a thing. That's spitting in the faces of those men that I just read about in the 369th, the Harlem Hellfighters, the Red Tails, the 6888. It's like all of them sacrificed so much for this country with the promise of a better tomorrow. And here we are, representatives of that tomorrow, acting like we have no place here, acting like we have nothing to contribute to this. We have no stake in this is wrong. And that's the reason why I wanted to read something about this. That's the reason why I wanted to remind you of who you are, of who we are. Because no one ever, anywhere is going to respect us until we respect ourselves. All right, guys, that's it. You guys can get in the comment section. Let me know what you think about all of this. Director X, Ryan Coogler, Spike Lee, anybody. This is a movie that needs to be made. This is a story that needs to be told. Let's see if we get that. All right, guys. Thank you for listening. I will catch you on the next one. This is The Gospel According to Mark with a C. Rock on.